Attention! The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for the entirety of the National Hockey League. Please stay tuned for further information from the Storm Cellar.
Welcome back to another edition of the Storm Cellar. Man, this team, Ray, this team is a teeter-totter, a seesaw, depending on where you grew up. I have yet to figure them out. I don't know that they have yet to figure themselves out. The good news is we face the Pens today in 8 hours. And so you have a quick turnaround, trying to think about what happened last night and go out and beat a Pens team that you should beat.
Well, it seems as though the team basically saved all of their energy for today's game because they didn't use a lot of energy yesterday. And it's a tough watch. And, we've always said between the two of us, we want at least 24 hours to decompress from the emotion that, we share with each other in those texts while we're watching the game and stuff. And they haven't dissipated in any way, shape, or form. I'm still super, Superfly TNT right now. Not very, very happy. But there's one thing that does make me happy and can turn my day into a very happy one very quickly. Not only is it you and I getting together to host another episode of the Storm Cellar, but it's when we get a guest. Okay. Well, we're bringing you a double dose this time. We get two guests. It makes me very happy to let everyone know that Jamie and John have stepped into the Storm Cellar. They've pulled up a chair, and we're ready to talk hockey with two great Caniacs. Jamie, John, thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, as is always the case here in the Storm Cellar, it's the fans that we like to focus on as well as the team. We are the fuel to the team's fire, and we always want to know more about the fans, how they get involved, who their favorite players are. It's a whole development over time. I mean, for me, it started in Hartford, right? And for Brad, 97, right? Did you cheer? You know what? I don't know if I've ever asked you.
Sir.
I don't know if I've ever asked you. Did you cheer for anyone else before you locked into?
I was a casual hockey fan then. My dad grew up in Ohio. I was born in Pennsylvania and lived in New Jersey before moving to North Carolina, although I was like 4. So I don't know if that counts, but I feel like the vibes. My brother used to take the train from New Jersey into New York to see the Rangers play when I was a baby.
Nice.
I casually would watch the Whalers and the Blackhawks. And that was in part because Chicago and Boston stations were two of the only over-the-air stations you could get where I grew up because there was no cable TV when I was a baby. Or even a young to middle-aged child.
Yeah.
So the Blackhawks were on TV. Like, that's why I was a Red Sox fan. The Red Sox and the Cubs were on TV. So, and then the Whalers just had the coolest uniforms like I'd ever seen. So,
right.
And I didn't know a lot about hockey then, but they had dudes like Gordie Howe, and it's like, that's a name I know. So,
yeah.
I wouldn't call myself a fan. I enjoyed it sometimes, but
yeah. We finally put that out there. I mean, everyone's heard my story because I keep talking about myself. Yeah, no, exactly. But now it's time to shine the spotlight on Jamie and John, and we're going to start with Jamie. We'll hear Jamie's story, then we'll transition over to John, and we'll start here. Jamie, first of all, we'd love to hear your story. How did you become a Caniac?
It is definitely an interesting story. You probably haven't heard before. So about 3 years ago, well, yeah, it is 3 years ago now, I received a virtual reality headset for Christmas. I started playing, had some fun playing virtual reality. And I learned that playing virtual reality is different than what people perceive it to be when they've never done it. It's really not just like playing video games. There is a big social network involved in virtual reality. You get to meet people from all over the world, and you can spend a significant amount of time getting to know them. And I am actually in North Dakota, so I'm not even in North Carolina. I'm 46
Neither am
years
I.
old. I'm 46 years old right now. I had never seen an NHL game 3 years ago. I think I had maybe been to my nephew's hockey games a couple of times to watch them play, and that is all I had ever seen of hockey. We do have hockey like in the high schools here, but it's the bigger towns. And I was from a smaller town that didn't have it, so it wasn't something I was really exposed to in school. So I started playing my virtual reality games, and one of the games that I played was sitting around a poker table, playing poker and visiting with people. And a couple of years ago, I ended up at a poker table with John. And we started becoming friends. We had a good time hanging out and would visit all the time. And he would sometimes say, "Oh, I can't play poker. I'm watching the hockey game." And I heard that several times. And eventually I was like, what's this hockey all about? And I tend to, when I make friends, like to find out about their hobbies. I like to learn more about them through finding about their hobbies. And I figure if I don't like it, at least I know more about them and can understand what they're talking about. So I started asking questions. At the same time, my parents had to laugh at me because I had other friends that were into UFC and heavy metal music, and I was learning about some of those things as well. My mother actually approached me one day and asked me if I was having a midlife crisis. So anyway, I started asking questions, and one day I said, "Well, let me look at what you're watching," and I turned on a game. And that turned to asking more questions and starting to learn some of the players and hearing stories about the team history and all of the things that they've done over the years, and it became more and more interesting. And then we met more friends in virtual reality who are hockey fans. We actually have a very good virtual friend in England, and he actually plays hockey. So he kind of joined in the group. We even have a friend who's a Rangers fan. So we even have a little rivalry going on
And no one's
VR.
perfect.
Can't win them all.
No one's
Right,
perfect.
right. So it became a community right away. It wasn't just learning about hockey. It was also becoming a part of the hockey community right from the start. And the more I learned about it, the more I fell in love with the game and the community. And this middle-aged lady started learning things that I didn't think I could learn at that time. And I'm a huge fan now. I went to my first 2 NHL games last year. My husband and I traveled to Arizona and saw them play in Arizona, which was amazing because the seating, it was so tiny that
mullet,
every seat was amazing. It was so fun. I got photobombed by Mike Maniscalco, which was the highlight of my night. Then in March, a month later, I actually flew out to Raleigh and went to my first home game. I got to see them play the Flyers. We won in overtime. That was really exciting. And I got to meet John and another friend that I had met on virtual reality, who's his real life friend, and his sister, who's also a Caniac, and just had a blast being around a place where you see Canes fans. When I went to Arizona, I saw somebody walking down the street in a Canes jersey, and I told my husband, I said, "This is the first time I've ever actually seen a Canes fan in person."
That's fantastic.
I got asked, did you get the tailgate when you came to Raleigh?
I did not tailgate. We kind of got there a little bit at the last minute.
Oh, you got to go back.
But
Then
I
you
hope to go back
absolutely have
again
to go
someday.
back.
Absolutely would love to. And then I also became a part of the Ladies of the Hurricanes Facebook page, and I absolutely have to give a shout out to them. It is the most amazing group of women I've ever been in a Facebook group with. You all know Facebook groups where there's always drama of some sort. I've never encountered that in this group. Just a lot of women who love hockey doing some really cool things for the team. For example, when a player was hurt, they'd have everyone sign messages on a banner and they'd present that to the player. You know, they're always doing something. They always do a group photo at the games, and I've gotten to be a part of that. That was just such a fantastic aspect to have all those women, and finding out that women watch hockey too, which I didn't realize. I also was in another Facebook group where I met somebody that grew up in North Carolina and now lives here in North Dakota. And we finally, about a month ago, my husband and I met him and his girlfriend at a hockey game here in North Dakota and got to meet. So that was really fun.
That's great. That's great. It's all about community. That's one of the things I said about the Caniacs, especially. It was funny. I believe it was Shane Willis on their podcast that was saying, you know, sometimes you're afraid to say, you know, this is like family because everyone's got the weird uncle, and it can be, you know, a little bit dicey at times. But really, I have no fear saying that it does. There is a very awesome family vibe in all of this. And John, it's your turn now. And hearing Jamie talk, it's like you were Obi-Wan Kenobi for her. Like you got yourself a Padawan, and you were sharing your knowledge, and like let's hear your story. Where did it start for you? First of all, the setup that you have that I'm looking at right now. It's a shame we can't share this with everyone. What a setup you've got going there, and the fact that you got the Whalers logo behind you, well, that makes me a very, very happy man. John, the spotlight's on you. Tell us all about it, your backstory. How did you become a Caniac?
Mine started a little bit longer ago than Jamie's for sure, but it was pre-Hurricanes. I had friends who loved hockey, and I just, you know, North Carolina wasn't the spot for that, so we didn't do a lot of watching of it. So I had a friend who was a diehard Philly fan, and so my father was from Pennsylvania as well. And so I cheered for everything Philly just because he was closer to, you know, they were in Reading. I cheered for everything up there because we didn't have anything down here. So when my friend was a big Philly fan, I started watching with him. And this is back when Brendan Moore was still there. So I started to get a little exposure to him. And then thankfully we got a professional football team. And I was like, what the heck? And then we got our hockey team. And it was just on from there. And even went to a handful of games in Greensboro, which was just wild because it always reminded me of the Will Ferrell movie Semi-Pro, because the stadium was almost empty. You know, I felt like I could say whatever I wanted to the the players at any time. I just get up and yell, and you know, we were talking, right? I mean, it was no competition there. So, but yeah, it just took off from there. And then, yeah, I have dedicated the garage, which is called the Barrage by some, to the Hurricanes. Basically, I feel like I'd be one of the fans the players might run from if they saw me. They were like, all right, that's one of the psychos right there. Look what he's done. Look what he's done. So, but yeah, it just grew from there. And then I'm trying to convert as many people as I can, of course, draw them in. So
fantastic. I love to hear that. And it, you know, it's kind of funny that we've got just between the four of us, we got quite the mixture of origins and how things started and where we all are now. And it's still family. You know what I mean? Like, even though the origins are so far flung and all over North America, you know, frankly, and then they all come together like this. It's amazing. I always ask all-time favorite and your current favorite hockey players. Jamie, who's your favorite Hurricane?
Okay,
Whether it be all time or right now.
My all-time history doesn't go back too far. So
No.
I will say my first year of watching hockey, the first player that I really became a fan of was Brent Burns.
Nice.
I don't know what it was, but he was the first one that I really connected to. It must have been the beard, right?
Yeah, well, maybe.
I just had so much fun watching him and cheering for him. I got my first jersey for Christmas. Of course, it was his jersey.
Nice.
You know, I was so new to the game at that time. that I was still learning who the players were, and something about him I just connected with. Maybe the older guy on the team, as not being so young myself, I thought that was pretty amazing that he, is still playing and is such a big leader for the team and kind of, a dad figure to a lot of the players. I think I found that really, really neat. And this year, I kind of have done a favorite player every year. This year is absolutely Jackson Blake.
Isn't it amazing?
And I have my North Dakota connection with him because he went to University of North Dakota. So I was kind of following him through that before he came to the Canes this year. And I was so excited to see him be on our team. And I just love to see him doing so well. I love the attitude he has when he plays, where he just does his thing. He doesn't overthink it and wait for something to happen. He just kind of makes it happen, I think.
He's one
been
of the
really
only
good.
guys that showed up last night. But we'll get
Not even
to
for a
that
rookie,
a little
right?
bit later.
Like he's been really good for anybody. I mean, he's been fun to watch. And Brent Burns, I definitely think is one of those guys who's easy to gravitate toward, right? I mean, even when I'm bagging on him, like I'm sure in person, like he's an amazing, person to talk to and everything. So the fact that he looks out, he kind of is taking guys like Jarvis under his wing is exceptional. You need those kind of guys in hockey. I mean, he's had a Hall of Fame-esque career and has the streak going. So phenomenal athlete. Like it's interesting how when you don't really know the players yet but you tend to gravitate towards guys, there's always something like even if, like you said, you can't quite put my finger on it, there's something about this. And it's amazing how often those guys are like, when you talk to people who have tons of experience, like, oh yeah, I love that dude. Right. It's
an aura. It's an aura,
And I found with hockey, compared to the other sports I watch, like I've watched, been a fan of football and other teams, I feel like in hockey, I've gotten to know the players more, not just how they play, but more about who they are as people and what their personalities are like compared to any other sport I've ever watched. So when I find my favorite player, it's always a mix of what they're doing on the ice, but also like who they are as a person.
Yeah. That's always important. I dig players that are like that. And what you find in a lot of these cases is that if there's one player that's like that, they flock together, birds of a feather kind of deal, right? And everyone's got this thing for the community. And it's one of the big draws for Carolina right now is not only is a great play, not only is a great culture to play within, but it's the community around it. There's a really a great feeling to this. John, your favorite all-time and current, unless they're the same. Lots of time it's the same.
No, I mean, it's shifted. I mean, I followed Rod for the longest time, so it was easy to jump on his train and lap onto him. But Sammy Kapanen, I just always loved his speed. Eric Cole was easy to love, obviously, back in the day. Archer Survey, I mean, he just...
RJ.
The vanilla pads he had on, the way he looked back there was just... and so great to cheer for. But and then today it is Jordan Martinook, even though I'm wearing Svetch jersey here. I love Svetch. I mean, what's not to like there? He's all heart. But the current one would be Jordan Martinook for sure, just because of his vocality and it seems like he loves being here. I think he really does. I think he enjoys it. I think a lot of players get hooked on being here because I worry about the young ones wanting to be in a big city. But I think when they come here, they really get it, and it's not that important to them. They really enjoy being here. So, and the community and the vibe that the locker room puts in there. So, and plus having Brendan Moore as a coach, I'm getting off on a tangent, but yes, it was probably Brendan Moore till Martinook came along, and then now it's close, right? But he's not playing anymore, Brendan Moore, so I can just go with Martinook.
There you go. Yeah. And I'll say this, Martinook, right? How many times have I said it, Brad? The Carolina Hurricanes Flava Flav. The man is just the greatest hype man I've ever seen. Craziest. And that type of energy, you need someone that's like that, right? It brings everyone up. gets them fired up and ready to go all on his own. And just saying, Archie, John, I've got to ask you, does Pyotr Kochetkov give you any triggering feelings about Artur's Urbe at all, like he does for me?
He does. I don't remember Archer's coming out and poke checking everybody as much as Kochetkov does, but for sure they have that same stocky little build or that same little tank-like feel in the goal. So for sure.
And you definitely wanted to put a shock collar on him to keep him in the. I can't even tell you how many times. Archie, what are you doing? Get back in net.
Get back in the net.
I love it.
It was awesome.
I love it, man. No, I dig his aggressive mannerism. That's very cool.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love hearing these stories. It makes me feel good inside just hearing your stories, hearing the joy, hearing the connections. Brad, I know it's the same sort of thing for you, right? I mean, that's what we really enjoy this. This is like, hook us up.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
these stories. Like, that's exactly what it is.
Having Laurel on, and then, we had a string of guests early on and saying, hey, that's the direction we want to go. It's different than what everybody else was doing. I mean, other Hurricanes podcasts have guests on, but generally they just kind of hop on and you get 2 minutes of backstory and they jump into, the X's and O's or whatever. And we were like, but what makes Carolina different? Like what's special about, the team? What's special? And we always go back to it's small market and their relationship with the fans and the fans' relationships with each other. We talk, Jamie mentioned, having a friend over in England on VR who's a Caniac. We have our friend Paul Lawson from Scotland who has come over and played. And my son and I got a chance to meet Paul at the Stadium Series. Actually, it was the Hall of Fame night, the night before the Stadium Series game. It was awesome, right? So he comes over,
so
he's friends with friends of mine that I've known for decades. And everybody's just welcome. It's, you show up, or when I live in Boston. So when I'm in town, if I am like, hey, I'm going to be able to go to the game, it's always like, okay, we're tailgating here. Like, just show up. And sometimes it's people I know, sometimes people I know just via social media, but sometimes it's just people I've, never really interacted with much, or I recognize like a username on the screen. And I even remember back when the Stanley Cup Finals, when I always say when the Oilers came down, Oilers fans came down with no tickets. They spent a lot of money to come in. They were offered thousands to get in the building. And they were the nicest people. It was, the teams left it on the ice, and there's definitely, I don't know about bad blood there, but it was definitely a hard-fought series. But we had Oilers fans like, hey, we brought beer, and we're like, hey, we have barbecue, like come and eat and sit down, and like let's just talk hockey. And they weren't like condescending or patronizing the way some other Canadian teams fans are, Habs.
Yeah.
So, it was really cool. So
I need to make one correction because Tom will not let me live this down if he thinks that we told the world that he's a Caniac.
Oh,
our friend in England, he plays in a hockey league over there. He claims to be a Flyers fan. But John and I have pointed out to him that he has watched more Canes games than Flyers games in his life. So we think he's secretly a Caniac, and we're working on him.
There we go. Conversion. Sometimes it takes a little time, right? Like to swinging over for sure. That's fantastic. I like talking about these great stories, and I'm procrastinating because we need to recap last week, and this is where we kind of get down to business and getting the different viewpoints. One of the things that I love is that, everyone's got a different viewpoint of how things happened. And always, always, always it comes up where someone points out something that I hadn't recognized, I didn't know and stuff. And we're all watching it from different angles. So let's break down the last week. A loss in a shootout, a win, and whatever that steaming pile was last night at home. I mean, it was horrendous. Let's go all the way back to the start of the week. Columbus, right on New Year's Eve, and things looked. I thought things looked pretty good for a good portion of the game, but they found a way to let Columbus back in. And Columbus did that to us last time, as a matter of fact. Both of the games in Columbus this season went to shootouts, which was
At
strange,
least
of course.
our goalie didn't get knocked out.
Yeah, exactly. At least he didn't wander out far enough to hurt himself, but that's again another story altogether. What was your guys' take of that game? I mean, I'm glad we got the point, but it feels like that was a missed opportunity to say the very least. We'll start with John this time. John, what did you think?
I think humans are always going to be human no matter what you do to them. So when they go to a lesser team, they're going to relax. There's nothing you can do to stop that. They're going to let their guard down a little bit. Now, I'll give it to the Hurricanes. I mean, I know other teams do this, but we play the full 60 minutes. But that's the only way I can explain it, because I went on some chat boards and stuff, and you hear the grumblings of how can we lose to these subpar teams when we're beating Florida's, we're beating these other guys, and we're a good team. But I think it's just a human element. You watch it in college, especially. As soon as you get a lead, you kind of relax, right? You can't help it. It's just the human nature of it. So it's the only thing I can explain it. Because the talent's there, the coaching's there. I think it's just, and it's hard to bring it every night. I mean, even today, right, on a back-to-back, that's going to be difficult the second day of that. But yeah, I should have had Columbus. That's disappointing, but
both of those games. Both of the games in Columbus, they got away on the Hurricanes. They just slipped through the fingers. Jamie, what was your take on that game on New Year's Eve?
Sometimes it's just a mystery to me. Like you said, they have the players, they have the coaching, and there's just some element that's not working on that night. I know in a previous podcast you had talked about, is it better to have all these highs and lows, or, just something more kind of stable going straight through? And I just feel like it's that high and low thing. And I don't know if that's a mental thing that's how they operate. It's a mystery to me.
And Brad, I mean, you and I, it's like we're sitting in the same room watching the game together, and it's probably a good idea that we don't actually physically be in the same, because there would start that vicious cycle of anger when we're seeing things that are just driving us nuts. And
I feel like our wives would kick us out. They'd be like, you two need to go to the bar.
Yeah, get out of here because you're making us nuts. Brad, I know you had a few points specific that I thought were poignant, and that the one that jumps out on me was the shootout lineup that you would have picked. I think all three different players altogether.
2 out of 3. I like Blake. Real quick, I thought the game was pretty even. And looking back, I mean, both teams scored a power play goal. They had about the same number of penalty minutes. They had similar amounts of giveaways, takeaways, face-offs. Columbus dominated. They block a lot of shots, which is something the Canes have faced a lot lately. But, Voronkov's goal went in off Jarvis. Like, that's just puck luck, man. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, right? The second Marchenko goal went in off of Brent Burns hitting Piotr. Like, maybe Piotr needs flashy lights like an airplane on his pads or something so guys don't hit him anymore. But to me, that's just bad luck, right? I mean, they were the Hurricanes were the better team, so I'm happy with that. In the shootout, the two things that bothered me was, one, you can't poke check back to back, Piotr. Like that, you just can't, because you do once, and now the next thing's going, oh, I wonder if I can get him to poke check, because then it's an easy score, which until he showed it was an easy score. Jackson Blake went first. I like that pick, right? He's young. He has energy. He's not been beaten down by shootouts in the past. Svechnikov, even though he's the one Hurricane who scored, I wouldn't have sent him. He actually had a really good shot on that one. I really liked that one, but he and like Aho's a predictable one, right? Aho is percentage-wise over all the shootouts of his career is at like 20%, which is pretty good. But if you're the goalie, you go, okay, it's Aho. I don't have to cover the top half of the net. He's going to go try and go low. I mean, it's every time. The one time I can distinctly remember Aho going high, it was an easy goal. So teams know, goalies know the book on him. They've seen the tape. They're like, it's him. Seth Jarvis, fine. But Aho and Svechnikov, I would have sent, I wouldn't say almost anybody else, but I would have sent Roslovic. I would have sent KK. Give them guys that they probably don't have a lot of film on. If Merrick Malik can score a between the legs shootout goal for the Rangers in like round 15 or whatever it was, which was ridiculous, then you don't need to go Aho, Svechnikov, Natchez.
The all-time greatest shootout goal ever in the history.
Even though
of
he
the
was
sport.
playing for the Rangers, that is my favorite shootout goal of all time because he got so much guard. People didn't like him when he was in Carolina. So many fans thought he was slow and stuff, not realizing he's just big. Like he doesn't need to move his legs fast to cover ground. So I always liked Merrick.
I loved Harry so much. I wish, I wanted him to stay. He was great.
And for Jamie, so Merrick Malik, because you probably never saw him, was I forgot how big he was. He was a monster. He was like 6'7", or he ridiculously big. We used to call him Harry, like Harry the Hendersons. If you ever saw that movie,
yes.
So we called him Harry because he reminded us from Harry the Hendersons. He was kind of big and he moved. He looked kind of awkward and slow, but he really wasn't. He was phenomenal. Loved him.
I'm going to throw something out there about Aho for sure. And when he's doing the shootout, he gets a lot of breakaways, shorthanded. He gets a lot of and he cashes in, right? He puts a great move. You think he just goes too slow? Do you think he goes through? Because we see, look, they're slow. There's friggin' glacial, like our, Kuznetsov was. But none of these guys are going in quick, like making their quick move and stuff like that. And do you think maybe Aho might be more successful and all of them, frankly, if they picked up the pace?
For me, maybe. I would also say I think that guys should do more of a J hook kind of a run in, start off the side, because if you can get the goalie moving laterally, you have a lot more opportunities to either make a move or just shoot it. So I don't know if I would do speed so much as the guys who go straight in. The goaltender just squares up, right? He's square from the get-go. So if you can get him to move laterally, so I like the guys who go in and do kind of that J hook run into the goal because for the same reason that Kuzi's really slow motion works, it's something the goaltender's not used to, right? You're pulling him out of his comfort zone. He's like, okay, he's coming down the wing. I know I'm probably going to have to move right to left to right. But then you can try and go short side if he cheats. And if he doesn't cheat, then you have an opportunity, on the far. So that's what I would like. I would like to see guys taking a less direct route.
John, Jamie, did you guys like the lineup selected for the shootout there, or would you have picked someone else?
I definitely agree with Brad that I think I would have chosen somebody like Roslovic. I think he would have been a great choice to be in there for that. And this is really interesting thinking about this because I'm learning more and more just contemplating and discussing these. I think that as far as the going slow, it is something that I have picked up on is that it's very predictable. And I think you just, I feel like if you're the player, it's comfortable to you, it's going to be comfortable for the goalie too. You got to keep them guessing. So I think that there could definitely be some more variety happening there so that it's just a little more unpredictable.
John?
I always agree with the coach. They know what's going on with the guys. But yes, of course, I probably would tweak things, but that's just, the couch quarterback over here talking. But as far as the slow thing, I think that's been more popularized lately. When I watch a lot more highlights, you watch the guy come in at 1 mile an hour because he's allowed to, right? They're exploiting that more these days. And I think it's become more the fad. So people are experimenting with it more. I've seen Crosby come in and almost come to a stop, side to side in the guy and then throwing it up in there. And if it works, it works. But I agree with Brad. I like that sweeping, getting that goalie moving. that's just, that would be a nightmare as a goalie if I was one. So I agree with that.
John, you know what? John pointed something out, Brad, that you and I need to remember sometimes. We are not the coach. We could not live 100 years longer and ever know more than what Rod has forgotten. So
This is true.
So
This is true.
He's got
I will
his
always
reasons,
counter
right?
that. I'll always counter that with, you can be the best in the world. You're gonna make mistakes, right?
Yeah, true
So
enough.
I will say, like, in the when Rod was still playing, the back of my truck in paint had "In Rod We Trust" on there from basically the time that we got Rod, made the playoffs, through when we won a cup. So I definitely,
Yeah,
in my line of work, we have a saying: trust but verify. And I apply that to all aspects of my life. That includes Rod. No offense, Rod, but I trust you to do the right thing. But when I look at the results, I'm going to verify and say, are we seeing the results we think we should be getting? And if we're not, I mean,
Yeah,
he's a big boy. He can take the criticism, especially for me, because he'll be like, whatever, like, I don't know anything. Like,
you know what?
Nice to meet you, kid.
I think if we met Rod, at least I know, based on how I met Ron Francis, I would just be, yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you, sir. I'll go to the gym now because he'd take a look at me and just kind of say, dude, you need some time on a treadmill or the bike, go
Yeah.
go spend some time on the bike. Let's change gears in this one. And the game in Florida, I fell in love all over again with the Hurricanes. But it was, they played that game like a movie. Fast and furious. That is how they played that game. And it was beautiful to watch. The speed and the anger that they played that game with. It was as though they had lost the two previous games against the Panthers by a total score of 12-3. That's what it was like. Oddly enough, it's true. That's exactly, but they played it the way they needed to. And that was the first real playoff hockey game this season, honestly, that I've seen. There's been a couple of other games that have been physical and intense like that too, but this was next level. It was so much fun. I called this game Fast and Furious. What was your take? So we'll start with Jamie this time. What did you think of that Panthers victory 3-1?
Well, actually, I didn't fully watch that game.
Okay.
I was I was playing poker in virtual reality,
Hey,
watching
as
the
long as you
game
won money.
on the TV on the wall while I was doing that. So I was just casually watching that one. But those Fast and Furious games are my favorites. They just have a spark, and it's so wonderful to see when you feel that.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. John, did you get a look at Paul Maurice when he lost his mind behind the bench in that game? You see, I recorded the 21-second tirade that the cameras came back to. And I'd never seen Paul that angry.
No.
Ever.
No.
Ever.
That all
That was
started
something.
after he left us. All that passion, because he was a piece of white manila paper when he was with us, right?
Wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he was a poker player. To go back to Jamie, this is a segue back. You'd never know what he was thinking. The man was just a friggin' blank slate. You couldn't read emotion off of him. You could tell the emotions he had there. And lip read the language that he was using. He was peeling the paint off the boards in the rink.
Maybe
Never mind.
He just had some cinnamon gum.
Maybe he did. Maybe he did.
Another big.
What did you think of the game, John? What did you think?
It was great, right? It's like you said it right there. It was like a playoff game, especially when Kachuk was just laying on our guy, and then Slavin kept playing. I mean, that's out of a movie right there. That was Braveheart, and it was amazing, right? And then we have something with that team, right? We have a rivalry with them, and to beat them like that in their arena, it was just amazing. I mean, you could have put a director in there, and that could have been a movie. Absolutely.
Wasn't it great? It was really awesome.
This is
Brad,
one I need to go back and rewatch.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
question. If you get a chance, go watch it because it'll erase what happened yesterday, number one. But number two, it's just good on its own. And Brad, we did something that we've never done before. It was, we have the stick of the game, Sanguinet's stick. I love a stick. You love a stick?
Yeah.
I love a stick. And we've always given it to one of our players that stands out and was the difference in the game. Really is why they get the first stick. For the first time ever, and Brad asked if I was cool with it, and I couldn't have laughed harder and said yes, Pastor.
I was almost done with the graphics. I'm glad you were okay.
The stick of the game we gave to Matthew Tkachuk from the Panthers. Thank you for being a knob and wailing on KK instead of letting him out.
Yep.
Just sitting there piling on. It was unbelievable.
It was such an easy, 3-1 sounds great, but it was such an even game. The only real place where I thought the Hurricanes really beat the Panthers was they out-hit the Panthers for once. With 34 hits to 28, that was a big deal, right? But for me, yeah. So KK slides into the goalie. People were like, oh, why wasn't that call play dead? Well, because KK can just get up and play continue. There was no scoring opportunity. It's fine. And then Tkachuk is Tkachuk, and he just lays there. And, the puck goes in. I love that Tkachuk turned to the ref like, how is that not goal interference? And the ref, you can see the ref is like, you're literally laying on him. Like, that's 100% a goal, right? So, yeah, Matthew Tkachuk won us that game. Great for Marty Necas to get the empty netter because he had been on a dry spell with goals. But Matthew Tkachuk, I get a lot of questions from especially newer fans and stuff like how is Tkachuk and Brady too? Like, how are they so dirty that they're not in the box all the time? And that's the key to being a Tkachuk right now. If I commit penalties the entire game, we both know you're not going to call them all because then the whole game is a power play. And we both know that the league is not going to let you do that. So what I'm going to do is basically overwhelm you with penalties. And then you're only going to call the really egregious ones. And that's Tkachuk's game. And people forget that or maybe don't realize like that's by design, I think. I don't think that Tkachuks do that, absentmindedly. Like he's literally always taking an extra cross check. You see him trip guys, interference, those kind of things. And they don't get called because he commits 25 of them a game. So they're only going to call the one or two really egregious ones. It's brilliant. I hate to give Tkachuk credit, but holy smokes. If we had a guy who would do that, I would be psyched about it. Like that's when you talk about like a pest or a rat, the guy who the other team hates to play against, like that's kind of what you want. Part of me wishes we had that guy. But Tkachuk earned that stick.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, can't hear you, Ray.
It's almost as though the Tkachuk family went to the Brad Marchand School of Hockey, to be honest. Because that's exactly how he is, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's no change.
If Keith Tkachuk's your dad, yeah, and he can be built a career playing that way, and his kids are doing the same. It's makes sense.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
All right, so do we have to talk about last night at all? Honestly, that was such a frustrating thing to watch, and it's such a stark change from what we saw on Thursday. That was Mr. Hyde on Thursday, who's outstanding. But it was equally outstanding in the other direction. And you want to give Minnesota some credit for what they did. Like you just want to give them credit because they worked hard. But our
Shouldn't have been
guys didn't
shooting
show
about it.
up.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing I cannot stand by. I don't know if we saw, and what's happened before with Brad and I is we look at the game and we say, they stunk. They weren't even trying. What's going on? And Rod Brindamore comes out and says, I kind of like the way they played. I don't think anyone liked the way they played last night. Jamie, we went with Jamie's start last time. So John, take us through, give us your, I guess, I don't need, give us your take on it. It's like
That that was a tough one, right? It was especially at home like that. I think, like you said, you got to give credit to Minnesota. They're a good team. It shouldn't have been that lopsided. That's what it shouldn't have been. I do like it when Brendan Moore comes forward, even in a loss like that, and says, "I like the way they played," because it baffles most of us, right? We're just like, "What are you talking about?" But he knows obviously what he's looking for, and just the game of hockey, right? Like we were saying earlier, it'll bounce off your skate. It'll bounce off an arm. It'll do all these crazy things. That's why we have so many shots on goals. That's why we do it, right? And that's just the way hockey falls sometimes. So I don't think Minnesota's that much better than us. I think that we were a victim of hockey. It's just the way it went. And that's why he can go and say that the team played well, even in this awful loss. But yeah, I just wish it hadn't happened at home. I wish it hadn't happened at all. But yeah, that one I can chalk up to just hockey, right? Plus, they're just a good team. I don't want to take away from Minnesota because they're a good team this year.
Jamie. I mean, that's a great take, John. Jamie, what did you see?
Well, unfortunately, it was blacked out on my television because I'm in
That's
Minnesota's
right.
local market, being in North Dakota. So I didn't get to watch the game, but I
See,
know that
now,
feeling of
John,
when you see those games that are like that. But I am probably the most positive fan that you will find, that when those situations happen, I'm pretty good at just turning it off and going on with life and thinking about what we're going to do next, which is the
oh
complete
man.
opposite of my husband, which is interesting. And ironically, I've come to learn to deal with those situations quite well, being a Minnesota Vikings fan over the years. So
My goodness. You know what, Jamie? Like John, myself, Brad, we're all jealous of you that game got blacked out. We wish the game was blacked out just in
you
its
wish you didn't have to
entirety
watch
because
it.
and I'm not like you. It's what is it? Self-flagellation. You make yourself suffer. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're giving
They're the
yourself the
whipping
whip.
post.
You're going to watch this game right to the bitter end, and you're going to be angry and miserable. And Brad was right there with me the whole time. And it was like,
Yeah,
it was awful. It was awful.
it was brutal.
It was. I tried to help Jamie out too, back to the VR thing, because something we will do every once in a while when it is blacked out. There's a little app in there called Big Screen where I can go in. It looks like you're sitting in a big, luxurious living room with a huge screen up there. I can put the game up there. They can join me in there. I can
That's
look at
awesome.
them with their avatar, and we can sit there and watch the game together, which is awesome, right? We've had a whole crowd in there before cheering for the games. I mean, even the guy, Tom, in the UK has broadcast the game up there when it's blacked out for us. He can get it and he'll put it up there for us. So we attempted to
Oh,
do
that's
that last night, but we're
amazing.
unsuccessful, but probably to Jamie's liking because it was lopsided.
That is super
Oh,
cool.
that is
Um,
outstanding.
It is. It's very cool.
yeah, they're both great takes. I think John has a history or has a future in broadcasting himself. Because one of the things that was as bad as the game was, Tripp works for the team, right? Tripp and Mike have one of the hardest jobs, like when things aren't going well, because they can't be as honest as Shane Willis, right? Because they're on TV, they're the radio crew, like they're trying to put a positive spin on things. And I said some things last night about Tripp's commentary, which were true, and I wasn't mean, but Tripp's commentary was just making me madder the whole night.
Yeah.
But I resonate with what Jamie said too. Like I generally am a pretty positive, outlook. Hey, it's gonna be fine. Like in the moment, I'm super mad, but like the next day, I'm shrugging it off. Like, things are gonna be fine, right? Minnesota was like the fourth best team in the league. You lost to them. It happens. And I feel like on social media, sometimes I'm like, oh man, people must think I'm just like a hateful, spiteful, mean, negative person. And I'm like, I'm not, but like this team pulls it out of you sometimes because in the moment, like, the lack of effort is what makes me upset, right? And then Tripp being like, "Oh, hey, it's all fine, just this thing." And I'm like, "No, like it's terrible." And for me, I mean, you can look at the stats, and the stats were pretty much all in Minnesota's favor, with the exception of faceoffs. But Rod Brindamore said, it's got to change. We have to get on a roll. That consistency has been a big issue with our group right now. We play really well, and then not so good. Finding that consistency is what we have to get to. Yeah,
Thank
100%. So Rod sees the problem. So that makes me happy, right? The head coach sees the same thing I'm seeing, which is there's an issue. Then your captain says the execution, the battle level, 50-50 special teams, the mindset, everything was wrong. I feel bad for our fans. It's the NHL. We can't just show up and see what happens. When you do, it looks like that, which is the right thing to say publicly, right? I'm a fan of keep it in the locker room. If there are issues, and people are like, oh, I don't care what happened. Like that's a locker room thing. I'm fine with that. So publicly, I'm happy with that. But it did make me say, and I've said this a little, I've started heading this way for a little while now, is like, is Jordan Staal the right captain for this team? Nothing against the way I don't think you have to be the best player to be the captain. I'm one of those people, like the captaincy is about leadership, not about hockey ability. And you don't need to be the captain to influence the team, right? Jordan Staal is a senior, well-respected player. But is the message getting through, especially with our team, skewing a little younger than it has in the past? Is he that reserved in the locker room? Because I don't think that's what this team needs. I think somebody needs to put a foot in their butt. And I've said a few times, Martinook is, I feel like, a great compromise captain is your next captain. I know people were like, it's got to be Slavin or Aho. Aho's your best player. Like I said, I don't subscribe to that mindset. Not that Aho would not be a great captain, but does the locker room need quiet, reserved, minimalistic captain, or is this a group that needs somebody who's going to speak up, right? Do they need a Burns? Do they need a Martinook? And Martinook's a guy who always seems to have a good attitude, even when they're not playing well. Like he's a professional. Like he's going to power through it. I feel like he could talk to anybody in that locker room and get more out of them. By the same token, he doesn't need to wear a C to do that. So, I've asked, is there a leadership problem? Because when you play this inconsistently, something's off, right? And it's not the system. It's not coaching. Like they're mostly doing the right things. It's a lack of effort. And if it's an effort issue, that means it's down to individual players making said effort. And if players aren't making the effort, your captain and your alternate captains need to be the ones to help fix that. That shouldn't be Rod Brindamore. I always joke about it. I'd love to see him like throw a chair or throw a bench on the ice like has happened in the NHL before. But you don't need that. What you need is your captain, your senior leadership group to say, hey, this is ridiculous. We're professionals. Either come prepared to play or, like there's going to be repercussions of some kind. And I don't know. The Canes need to figure it out because, win, lose is it'll get us in the playoffs and then it'll get you bounced in the first round.
Yeah.
And selfishly, knowing Ray and I get to meet each other again in Toronto here in a month, if we win every other game, which has been the pattern, we're going to lose the Toronto game. So they need to change the pattern at least alternate the pattern by a game, right? At least win or to lose two in a row and then go back. Because I don't want to go to Toronto and see them put up the effort they saw last night, because I will be furious. If I was at that game live last night, I would have been not happy.
Well, and John, you got to feel good because Brad is picking, of course, Martinook, your favorite player, as the coach. What do you think? What do you think of that idea? Or is there a need for a change at all? What do you think?
I know. I agree with it. It's all unexplained. As long as the vibe in the locker room is that, and I think it is. He's been there so long, and I think Jordan Staal is just too Canadian nice and probably quiet. Same thing. I'd love to have Slavin, but he's just not outspoken, and you need that, right? You need that person who's going to speak up, stand in the middle of the locker room, get everybody ready for that game, no matter what. And that's definitely Jordan. I mean, you see it all the time with him. So, you know, we picked Stahl because he was the obvious choice, I think, at the time. But definitely, I mean, it's hard to get 2 words out of him when you're, giving an interview. So, yeah, I definitely agree with Jordan. I mean, I'm biased.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Jamie, what do you think? Leadership problem?
I would 100% get behind having Martinook as a captain. I mean, we all agreed that the major issue is the consistency, and that's such a mental thing. And I think that is one place that could be addressed. And Martinook has that more outgoing personality, and I think he could be a very good bridge, between the young guys and the older guys, and like making everybody a real cohesive unit. And yeah, I just like change is good in general at times, I believe. And I think it just something new and fresh can really bring something to spark a team. And I think it would be a great thing to try to address that issue.
I hate to do the retreads of things that have happened in the past, but last year, whilst I was in Bahamas, the hurricanes were in the Western Canada and stinking. And after the game in Vancouver, Sebastian Aho stepped up and they did a players' meeting only. And then they went to Ottawa and blew the doors off of the Senators. And that was the key, actually, to the start of what saved what saved the season really for last year. And I guess my point there is the leadership in the locker room don't have to be wearing the letters. They don't need the stitches over the heart. They just need to step up and start taking control. And I think we can leave. There's advantages to having Jordan Stahl as the captain. It's the communication with the officials. It's everything, right? And when you're long of tooth and well respected like he is, I think that goes a long way. And you don't really need to make a change in the leadership so much as you need everyone pulling on the rope in the same direction. And once they do that, and if you can get everyone saying it, and it seems like everyone's aware of it. I mean, Nate just swore on television in his intermission thing. And he said it very plainly, the way we would say it now if it wasn't for the fact that we are a family-friendly program and we like to curb those things. But, he was aware of it. Now, I'm not suggesting Natchez is a guy who's got leadership written all over him. I don't think he is. If you enjoy Ted Lasso, I'll say that Natchez is Jamie Tart through and through. That's just who he is. And I don't mind that. He's got tons of talent, but everyone's got to remember they're part of a team and they have to start pulling the rope in the right direction. And speaking of going in the right direction, Brad, I know we've got 4 games now before we before we get back on the air. And it's not an easy week. We have got, let's see, today against Pittsburgh, Tuesday against the Lightning, Thursday against the Leafs, Friday against Vancouver. Not an easy week at all. The Leafs are playing better. Vancouver is a tough out anytime. The Lightning, of course, there's Vasilevsky just waiting to eat our lunch and goalie us again. And Pittsburgh today, I mean, Pittsburgh's fighting for a spot. They're trying to, turn their season, out of the dump. And they're going to be hungry to get a victory here. What
They are. They've been caught by the Blue Jackets, so they're tied with the Blue Jackets in games played and points. So both teams are 8 points back on the Canes. So you want to win today, right? Metro teams always come first. If you're going to pick a victory, start with Metro teams, win those.
Yep.
The Lightning, the Canucks, the Penguins are all kind of middle tier teams right now. They can all beat you, right? The Lightning are always tough. Like as long as they have Vasilevsky, they're going to be a tough out. Toronto's top of the Atlantic. Like they're one of the best teams in the league. They're playing like it. So, 8 possible points. And in years past, I'd say, you should get 5 or 6 of these. And with the way they're playing, 4. Because, they're not exactly trap games, but I think they're going to beat Toronto, who's by far the best of the 4 teams. But that's the one I feel confident about because they have been playing to the level of the competition in some ways. I hope they beat the Penguins. But then you have, the Canucks and the Bolts, and toss a coin, roll a die. Like I don't really know what we're gonna see. That whatever team chooses to forecheck and play in transition has a very good chance of beating the Canes. And the Canes, if they come out flat like they did last night, you're just not going to win games against any team in this league playing like you played last night. You're going to have a better effort than that. So I just want some consistency. I've said for weeks, for my whole time I've watched hockey, like if there's one thing I want, it's consistency. What got me through the quote unquote the dark years was knowing they're going to compete to get into the playoffs, and that's the ceiling, right? And unfortunately, that's how they played. They were fairly consistent. They played to try and get a playoff spot, and they were normally in the mix, even if they failed. They were never bad enough to get a number 1 pick, but at least they were consistent. So at least your expectations were, this is the team. So the team that played and beat Florida, the team that went out there and dusted the rags and stuff, where is that team 40% of the nights, right? That's what I don't understand, and the players need to figure it out. And I'd love to see Aho or somebody. The reason I say changing captain is it's a shakeup, right? It's more than just a little bit. If you're changing captain midseason, unfortunately, it would look bad for Stahl, but it will let the players know like this is not acceptable, right? You could do that via trade. You could do that through other things. I don't think that's necessarily what they need to do, but something needs to change in the locker room, whatever it is, because things seem to be pretty well early on. And so I don't think it's like a locker room cancer. I don't think it's like a guy or guys who aren't buying in like it was last year. But what is it? I don't know.
8 points available this week. Jamie, what do you think? We all know we want 8 points. What do you think we're coming away with?
I think I'm going to go with 4 as well. It's so hard to I feel like it's so hard to predict right now because it's been so up and down. You just wonder which version of the team is going to show up for which opponents. So that's my best guess.
John, what do you think?
I'm going all 8. No, I want to go all 8. I want to go all 8, but it's going to, especially, today off that loss, just being a back-to-back is going to be tough. And I know they may talk about it in the locker room, but something the Hurricanes need to remember too, especially with like the Columbuses and stuff like that, is you're a marked team. You're a good team. So Columbus isn't going to come in and play you average. They're talking in the locker room, hey, we're playing the Canes, man. We're going to play our best today. The New England Patriots in their heyday, they could be playing the Browns on their worst year, but the Browns are like, well, we're going to try today, unlike any other day. So that's what happens to the Hurricanes too, I think, as a team comes in and they're like, dude, this is somebody we really want to beat. And so they take it up 10 notches. And the Hurricanes, if you're going to stay right, you got to meet that somehow. It's not just another day for the other team. They're playing the Canes. That's a big deal.
Such a great point, John. And the thing that you hear with every opposition player interview, they all say, we know how they play. We know what they're all about. And it's we're almost like the Hurricanes at times can be a victim of their own success because their blueprint is pretty simple to follow. They play man to man, they shoot from everywhere, they forecheck you into the ground, and they hustle hard everywhere. That's all you need to know about the Carolina Hurricanes. And so, what do you do to beat it? And there's enough tape that shows when an opposition team out canes the Canes, that's when they lose. That's when the Hurricanes struggle, when they're fed a little bit of their own medicine. And John, you were so right. Every team is getting up. And it's not just the great teams that want to square off because it's a battle of heavyweights. It's the Columbuses. It's the teams that are struggling, that aren't doing as well. The Buffaloes. They're going to be up for it. They're going to be up for it. I want to say that we'll get 5 points this week. I don't see it, and in fact, I think we might not even get 4. If we get 4, I will be okay with that. I will be okay with 4. Get me at least 4. Anything else is gravy. Anything under is just not enough, and it'll be a real. It'll show and shine a very bright light on the Hurricanes' issues at this moment as far as consistency goes. This has been a fantastic episode. I can't even tell you how much fun it has been to have not just one, but 2 Caniacs joining us. There's plenty of room. We love it. And I'm gonna put both John and Jamie on the spot. Norma, first of all, we're going to say thank you. You've been great guests, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, okay? Other guests said that, run podcasts and stuff. We let them, pimp their show and talk about, where they could find them and so forth. You guys have a cool thing going on with that virtual reality thing going on. Is there any way people who would like to give that a try, they can get in contact with you somehow to do this? Because I think it's an amazing idea. I would love for people to expand their minds a little bit more. And is there a way that anyone can join you guys like that?
Yeah, I can throw out one of my social media accounts if anybody wants to send me a message. Let's see if I remember correctly. My Instagram would be Huggy HUGGY 53178 is my handle on there.
Awesome. And then so people just contact you, a quick little DM, and you'll lay out the instructions on how to do it. Awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Send a direct message if you have questions, want to learn more about it. If you are already in virtual reality and you're a Caniac and you want to connect, my VR name is Huggy531. So just find me on there, and I'd love to share more time getting to know more Caniacs.
So much fun. So much fun. Thank you so much. You've made our day. Thank you very much for joining us. You two have been great.
Thanks.
Love your insights. And
thank you for having a hockey newbie. Welcome to the show.
No, that's partially what we're here for.
Yeah, and we all started somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the one thing you have to remember. We all start from somewhere. Everyone says, "Oh, we don't like bandwagon fans and stuff like that." Nah, we were all bandwagon fans at one point in our lives. There's no question about it. Brad, this has been a great episode and a lot of fun with a few technical difficulties. I got to figure out what's going on my end of the world. We'll get that straightened up for next week.
No worries.
But there's really, now that I think of it, we've covered so much, but there's something missing again. And my head is swimming. Go Canes!
Go Canes!
Let's go Canes!
thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks, doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We will do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.